We are going to give it another 20-30 seconds for more people to join us. So bear with us. We're about to start our webinar very, very shortly. Thank you. Good morning and welcome everyone to this Morgan Hunt webinar on life after redundancy and finding confidence and new opportunities. This morning, we'll explore redundancy from both perspectives, how individuals can navigate this personal and professional challenge, and also how employers and leaders can provide more meaningful support during a time of real change. My name is Clare Keniry, and I'm a director at Morgan Hunt, and I also lead on human resources within our business. For those of you not familiar with us, Morgan Hunt is an award-winning national recruitment business with over 130 expert recruiters across the UK in Glasgow, Manchester, Birmingham, and London. Established over 30 years ago, Morgan Hunt provides specialist recruitment services to thousands of organisations across the public and private sectors. We match purpose-driven professionals with employer organisations across the UK. This topical webinar promises to be a really engaging session, and I'm delighted to be joined this morning by three excellent guests, all with recent lived experience of redundancy and experience of supporting other professionals and employer organisations through that change and redundancy process. So firstly, I'd like to welcome Clare Wiggins, who is a business development and account manager with over 25 years experience across FMCG, wholesale, property and telecommunications, both in the public and private sectors. Clare herself has recently gone through a redundancy process and can talk from that experience about regaining her confidence and landing a new role in a competitive job market. We're also joined this morning by Jez Fraser-Hook, who is a senior leader with over 20 years experience building and leading high performance teams, global teams across commercial, project management and operations. Jez has also recently gone through redundancy and specifically experienced the emotions of leaving a long-standing employer, regaining confidence and expanding his network. And our final guest this morning is Suzanne Penny, a career transition and leadership coach who collaborates with individuals and organisations to navigate redundancy, career change and leadership development. With over 20 years experience in outplacement, recruitment and people development, Suzanne now helps individuals gain career clarity and build their own confidence and step into leadership with resilience and impact. Just a few pointers before we start our conversation this morning in terms of our format. We'll aim to finish at about 11 a.m. That'll give us 45 minutes for our kind of general conversation. And I'll aim to leave about 10 or 15 minutes at the end for audience questions. So please, if you do have any questions for the panel at any stage of our conversation, please post those onto the YouTube chat. I will see all your questions and I'll aim to answer as many as we can, time allowing. So a little bit restricted by time, but we'll try and cover as much as we can. So to kick off our conversation this morning, I thought it would be really helpful. First of all, Clare, maybe if I can come to you to give us a little bit more information about your own personal redundancy journey, and then Jez, maybe you can do the same. So Clare, would you like to start that?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So when I was made redundant, that was about 6 months ago now. Initially, I was quite shocked. I didn't expect it. I definitely my anxiety was really high, and I think it was just pure panic of what am I going to do now? So definitely a sense of loss there as well. Um, my part of my identity, not having a job, particularly, I felt a bit embarrassed as well, and humiliated because I've always succeeded in my careers. So that side of thing, I felt I really struggled with.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? How personal that kind of panic and loss, and you've said embarrassment, which I think everyone can relate to. And Jez, from your perspective, can you talk us through kind of your journey in terms
Yeah.
of redundancy?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. So yeah, I mine's slightly different to Claire's in that I was made aware of my redundancy in the summer of 2023. The company had merged with another company, and there was a number of redundancies going on at the time. So in that summer, I was given the option of another role, which was kind of a set time with potential of going longer. And it was an exciting role. It's quite a high level strategic role. So I decided to take that. And then just before Christmas, I was made formally redundant, which did come as a little bit of a surprise and was put on gardening leave as well. So it was quite interesting because that Christmas period time gave me the time for reflection, obviously the stress that comes with it, a little bit of emotion, quite a lot of emotion, and thinking about my options. And actually, in that 2 week process, I did think quite a lot, and it did benefit me having 2 weeks off, having just been given that news. So, and it came kind of, I'd been at the company, as Claire mentioned at the start, about 25, 26 years in various roles. Um, so yeah, I officially left at the end of March 2024. Um, and that's kind of
Yeah.
top level of my story.
Yes, and that's a big thing. Leaving a long-standing employer, that is a big thing. And Claire, I mean, you've touched on it, that kind of emotional and personal impact, and I actually think that's not, if you haven't gone through it recently or at all, and some people are lucky enough never to go through redundancy, but many of us have. It's that impact of the personal and emotional that actually you probably aren't necessarily thinking it's going to happen. So can you talk, just expand on that, because you mentioned a few things. You mentioned that feeling of panic, loss, embarrassed, how you felt initially, and how, I suppose, also how that might have changed over time as you adjusted.
Yeah, sure. So as I said, I think the main thing for me was feeling really embarrassed about being made redundant because, as I said, I've always been career focused. I've always wanted to climb the ladder, and I just thought, why me? I've always tried to prove myself and go above and beyond work. So after I'd got through that process, I just felt like I needed to take a break, and I reached out to friends and family and just was really open with them about my emotions, which really helped. And there definitely is a process. I feel my best advice would be is to, take care of yourself, go and do things that you enjoy to try and switch off from all that noise. So, and the next thing is definitely have a routine as well, because when you're not working and when you're at home on your own, it that you just end up losing your confidence. So to be able to keep busy, have a routine and focus is probably one of the best advice I can give in that place.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, yeah, I think actually also that point about being open with other people really would have helped, rather than, I'm sure a lot of people try and just kind of be strong and keep it in, but that's not
Yeah.
really, sounds completely counterproductive. And Jez, I mean, you've talked about leaving a long-standing employer, and that in itself is a big wrench. That feels it's almost like a relationship. You're walking away from such a long time.
Mhm.
What particular personal challenges did you find that kind of hardest to cope with at that stage when you were made redundant?
Um, it was definitely the routine and the purpose. I think, initially my days and setting goals and priorities, kind of especially as all of a sudden they look quite different and without structure. So that was a real challenge in all of a sudden you don't have that purpose, you don't have the connection with people, with time necessarily. And so uh, the I think that was the biggest thing of really trying hard to get myself back into a routine. And that was kind of easy because my wife was still getting up at 6:20 in the morning, so that enabled me to really focus. And I am quite good at getting focused, but it was still, I think, the most challenging thing. I think the other big element was disengaging myself from the old company. So without repeating myself too many times, I've been there just over 25 years. So it was kind of embedded in me. And even though I'd had many different roles, worked with different people, um, I still had that identity of working for that company in that latest job title. So it was really kind of transitioning away from that and uh, kind of, okay, who am I? What do I want? Where am I going?
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. Um, Gary, you've mentioned it already, but looking back on what kinds of support were most helpful for you, you mentioned family. Can you talk us through that? Why was that really helpful to be able to reach out to friends and family and be honest with them at the time?
So is that for me?
Yeah, sorry, Claire.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah,
you, because
sorry.
you mentioned
Yeah.
the fact that you got that support from family.
Yeah, so I think for me, as I said, I was really embarrassed about being made redundant. And I think I learned to be really open and honest after a while. And even local clubs. So I was a part of a cycling group, and I ended up just talking to everyone about it and my journey, and just trying to open up a network with those people and say, oh, I don't have a job at the moment, but I understand that you work for such and such company, and could you have a look for me? So I think I got my mind shifted from being embarrassed to really open and opening up to people and telling them, look, I'm looking for support here. Can you help me?
Yeah.
Also, I know I was explaining this to Suzanne the other day, but putting on your LinkedIn page that you're open to work, I found really tough. I felt embarrassed about it, but eventually I got there. So I think it's really changing the way that you think and being more open and transparent and saying, look, yes, I have been made redundant, but I am amazing and I can do all of this.
Yeah. Suzanne, thank you, Claire. That makes sense. And Suzanne, I thought it'd be helpful to come to you because you have an insight into this in terms of the kind of support networks that are quite helpful when dealing, particularly with this emotional impact, particularly at the start of being made redundant.
Yeah,
So can
and
you give us your ideas on that?
I think, like we've heard, redundancy can affect us from an identity level. It can affect us from a structure level. And we're so used to getting up, going to work, and when we don't have that in our diaries, it can really, really impact. As Claire said, around, talking to friends and family is great, but they don't always understand because they're not in the same situation. And I know when clients I've supported before, they'll say, well, they keep saying things like, have you got anything yet? How's it going? And then they're adding pressure without really realizing
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah.
in terms of support networks, some organizations, if they have bigger redundancies, they may have an alumni groups where people are going through that in the same situation. They can be really helpful. Not all will, and it can feel especially challenging either for those as Jez that have been with an organisation for a very long time because the job market's changed considerably. And many leaders will say, well, many people will say, I don't really have strong networks outside of the organization. So some immediate things for support networks. Claire's amazing at voluntary work. And something that I did when I set my business up. I will just say I've had two redundancies in my own career. I also set my business up in the pandemic, out of work as a single mum of two kids. I had no structure. All this imposter syndrome came in, and there was no structure at all. So support networks, friends and family, yes. Thinking about who else do I know that could be going through this, because it could be forming a bit of a buddy group, could be really beneficial. Looking at whether there's communities nearby to you. So I run a virtual community, which has made a huge difference to people since September. We've just had 3 job offers and 3 people starting the last week. That's given everybody a lift.
Brilliant.
Other support networks, some people are getting on things like Meetup, virtual Meetup. And for support networks, volunteering can be great. This can be an opportunity to get some structure, do some volunteering. And I've just heard of 2 people that have landed jobs in this current market through through voluntary work.
Right.
There's various different, various different support networks out there.
Great.
Can I add
Yeah,
something?
please, Jez. Yeah.
Just on 2 things actually. One thing that Claire mentioned about the open to work on LinkedIn. So I was also reluctant, as Suzanne knows, and from that embarrassment aspect, I guess. But I did it, and it was extremely beneficial for me personally. And I also make the point now of seeing people in my network who've also got that open to network and like their post and try and make connections where possible, having gone through that. And that's really come from the fact that I found I was kind of lucky, which is quite sad in a way, because a lot of ex-colleagues from the same company had been made redundant. So I found talking to them, not about the specifics of the redundancy, but more about experiences, the emotion side of things was really, really beneficial, as well as networking and speaking to contacts from outside of the company that I worked for, who I knew that had been through redundancy in the last couple of years. And it really surprised me how willing people were happy to give half an hour of the time, just to have a chat, just to share experiences and share experiences and give some really
Give some
beneficial
help if
ideas.
they can. Yeah.
Can
No,
I just
that's
mention something to anyone on here that may be in the same boat of thinking, do I turn on the LinkedIn banner, or there could be some embarrassment? 2 things to remember. One, the role has been made redundant, not your skills and expertise. That is still needed. The second thing, if we can't let our network know that we're open to a new opportunity, what's the point in having a network? Is the kind of way I see it. If we can't openly say, I'm open to a new opportunity after X amount of years with an organization, I'm now in career transition, this is what I'm looking for. That, like you said, Jez, people will in our own networks, they'll be open to saying, oh, you're amazing. Do you want to have a conversation? They want to help. So it's really key to, I said in my community the other day, think of the banner rather than open to opportunities. Think about it with something else, like open to being picky. I'm still being picky. You can reframe it in a positive
yeah.
way. So yeah, and I'm just going to mention there's another Claire who I'm really chuffed has started a new job today after 8 months looking on the job market. Guess how she landed the role? LinkedIn, but this was by posting. So she had her banner on. She started posting the last couple of months, did her first ever video, which took lots of confidence. And she's been regularly posting each week and commenting. An organisation saw her post, she's landed a role. So we've got access to the world's largest database, and having that open to work banner on is definitely nothing to fear.
No.
Unless you're in
Agreed.
stealth mode, unless you can't openly advertise that, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless there's a reason from a private and confident. No, I completely agree. Jez, just back to you if I could. And we've mentioned kind of that whole self-worth, excuse me, and how linked that was to your role, and you were saying like it was even hard to walk away from the organization and get your head away from not thinking about them. So I mean, in the end, you've got to try and separate your self-worth from your job role and career identity because it's really difficult when going through redundancy. So how did you do that?
Well, I'm going to promote Suzanne here because it was I engaged with Suzanne fairly early in the process prior to early in my redundancy process, and it was really for me an incredible eye opener to be able to just take a step back, work through who I am, what makes me tick, looking at previous roles, what I've liked, what I didn't like, what do I want, what my motivators are, what my values are, all of that kind of wonderful stuff that we don't do.
Mm.
And well, personally, I hadn't done before, but I'm actually making an effort now to revisit it every 6 months because I think it's really important to kind of just help you. And so from that experience, I always encourage people now to engage with a career coach, or whatever
Yeah.
the term is, and because it does give you enormous value, to help direct you, to motivate you. But I think above all for me, I am quite good at making myself accountable, but I've got someone else to do it as well to keep me accountable. I go back every week or every couple of weeks, and you've got to have done certain things to drive yourself forward. So making you actionable, and really above all for me, making me motivated. I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, no, it did. It did. And it's that external person who can actually help you and
Yeah.
look at your strengths and weaknesses and
And I,
help you give you a bit of clarity.
yeah, and I think the other aspect was it really changed how I view my career as well. So kind of I guess more balanced is the wrong word, but I'm kind of open to new opportunities. I'm really happy in my role as I've got now. I've been here for 14 months. I'm really happy. There's lots going on, um, but at the same time, um, you know, I kind of realise that I've still got a number of years working, and having spent 25 years at one company, I kind of realise I'm not. Well, I won't anyway, because my age. I won't spend another 25 years at another company, but. So it has made me
Yeah,
change how I view my career.
great. Yeah.
And
And Claire, oh, sorry, Suzanne,
no, I
you
was
was,
just going to say full transparency. Claire, when you and I discussed doing this webinar and
Mm.
putting this webinar on, one of the key things we said was let's get people on here that have been through this. So I know Jez and I know Claire, and I reached out to them to say, would you like to be on here? Just complete transparency here for anyone that's listening today.
great. And Claire, if I could ask you on that, because you talked about kind of that personal feeling when you were made redundant. So has this redundancy process and then coming out the other side changed the way you view your career and your professional identity?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to touch base on something that was mentioned before. So, I decided when I was out of work to do a lot of volunteering. As I said, I was at home on my own, and I just needed that feeling of going out and actually using my brain and being involved in something. So I highly recommend that to anyone, because it's a great way of engaging with people and learning new skills and getting involved with lots of different things that you wouldn't normally get involved. So, for example, I joined the local council. I'm now a councillor, and I'm continually learning things all the time on my council. And I also do some volunteer work for Protect the Wild charity. I'm always trying to say yes to everything just to grow and learn more and more. So I highly recommend volunteering.
Yeah. So it's been an opportunity to kind of really change how you look at everything you do in your
Yeah,
life, which is great.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I
And
would. Oh,
yes,
sorry,
yeah,
go on, Claire.
I was just going to say, from what you said, Jez, I didn't learn about finding a career coach till a bit later on. And when I found Suzanne, I felt it was just a relief because someone understood where I was coming from, and someone helped me align and helped me with my CV and understand who I was, my skill set. And I'd come from I was in sales for about 26 years. Then I changed to project management, acquisition. But really, Suzanne helped me understand that my love was sales. I love communicating with people and getting that sale and winning business for my company. So Suzanne helped me realize that and take that direction. So highly recommend a career coach as well.
Can I
Sorry.
mention something in here? Because just a couple of things to say. If anyone's on here today going through this process with your employer, if you're offered outplacement support, take it, because that would enable you to have access for the company funding coaching for you. So if you are, or if you're expecting a redundancy or concerned that your role could be made redundant, ask for outplacement support. That would be a good thing to do. Some people, like we've said with coaching, and do you know what I didn't do when I started the business? I struggled for 2 years with it. And probably about a year and a half in, I got a coach, which really helped me. It helped me greatly. But I think, like you said, Jez, it almost connected me as well to my why and what I'm doing and where I'm going. But something I've noticed, I'm getting more and more people reach out to me on LinkedIn and say to me things like, I've had over 50 rejections. I've even had a couple of directors say I've had 100 rejections. And I've asked from kind of kindness, who's had a look at your CV? Are you changing your CV? Have you what? And they'll say, I'm sending out the same CV. It's little things like that to go, well, if it's not working, stop. It can be much more time effective and cost effective to pause. And pausing isn't being lazy. Pausing is strategic. It's a strategic move. And think about what's working. Zoom out of the situation. What's working? What's not? How clear am I on what the goal is? And completely respecting client confidentiality here. But Claire, you just said you got clear on the type of role that lit you up, where your strengths lay.
Yeah.
So then you can redesign that CV LinkedIn profile to speak to your ideal role. And that's when we see results coming in. The other key thing I always suggest to clients is keep a log of everything you apply to and grade it high, medium, or low interest. And I always see when clients are putting their energy, they're putting energy and time into applying for roles they don't even want. And I know in this market, there's more pressure. People are thinking, do you know what? I need to get anything. But actually, same in my community right now. They started with 5 people in my community. It wasn't very big, but the first thing we did was got clear on what were we looking for, and then apply to roles only that you want to put that energy into. Makes such a difference. It really does.
You're not getting the kind of beaten up all the time because you're not hearing back from all these volume applications.
Claire, your
Yeah.
sound's gone a bit then. Sorry.
Oh,
I don't know if it's me
apologies.
or yours.
Can you
Whilst
hear me
Claire's,
now?
yeah.
Yeah. Go on,
Well,
Jez.
I was just going to add to what Claire Wiggins said about volunteering. So I was the same. I for many years I'd said I haven't got time to do volunteering, and that was one of the first things that I did go into. As a runner, I've always admired people who guide run for visually impaired runners. So I started that within a month of being made redundant, and still doing it today. So I'm finding the time to fit it in even today, and bearing in mind that my runner doesn't particularly like the dark evenings, so I've got to make space in my days to go out with him.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend volunteering.
And really quickly on that, if anyone on here is thinking about setting up a business, as a business owner, I do 2 lots of voluntary work. I've just landed my biggest project supporting a higher volume of people through redundancy via my voluntary work. So there is that sense for anyone here that's thinking of self-employment. Voluntary work isn't always, it's not a thing to go, I want to get something from it, it's what I can give. But sometimes naturally things come back round. There's another bit of voluntary work I do for a women's charity that is very much just paying it forward to people. But you'd never know what doors can open from this, and it makes you feel good, right? It can really help with our well-being, knowing that we're making a difference whilst we're in transition. Same with if you want to offer mentoring services. Some professionals are going on things like Meetup, or they're offering to be a mentor for their network, and are open to mentoring opportunities. So that can be a really nice thing for well-being as well, just for this whole process with volunteering.
Yeah, that will help with your sense of worth
Yeah.
and all of that. Hopefully my sound is a bit better now. I'm just aware I knew this would happen. We've got loads to talk about in little time, but hey, we'll have to revisit, I think. Suzanne, I just wanted to come back on this whole kind of using this pause. You mentioned pausing, and I think that's really important. And we've had somebody comment on that themselves, saying, if something's not working, pause, reflect, adapt, try something different. And I think that's really important again for your sense of worth, because doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome is just not going to work. But I wondered if we could come back to advice you can give individuals who can use how they use redundancy as a bit of a catalyst for career redirection, and and how they take those steps.
So how we can I think first of all, reframe it to redundancy is redirecting you to something else. And I always think of our life is like chapters in a book. And you can almost kind of think to yourself, well, if what was the last chapter in my book called, and think of a name for it. What do I want the next chapter in my book to be called? What do I want it to be about? And that pause, like you said, just to kind of reflect and really think about what you want next. What you want now in your career may be different to what you wanted when you took the role previously. Life changes. So really get clear on what your core values are, what your strengths are, and when we play to our strengths, we're more energized, we're more productive. So it's really practical to do things like a career review timeline, where you chart your career and you go back. You don't start, we automatically with redundancy think about what's next. We'll actually go back and reflect. And you can kind of bar chart your career, which bits gave you joy, which bits didn't. What are you looking for next? Is that answer the question? What else was there in the question? Sorry, Claire.
It was really that kind of redirection. So using this pause as an opportunity to redirect and think, because Claire's talked about going back to what she really liked and was good at and clearly lit her up. But equally, some people might use this as an opportunity to go, you know what, I want to try something different, maybe similar or along the same lines, but how you make that leap, because that can feel a bit scary.
We've just seen it. Somebody in the community who was in IT in the tech world has gone into teaching. He literally has just done a career pivot, thought about what he really wanted next, did my career clarity course, and he spoke to people in the community about his idea. He also I think it was him. I always say to think about asking for testimonials from other people to see what your strengths are. Read through testimonials to just kind of remind ourselves of what those strengths are. And then from thinking about what causes do we feel compelled by? If there are any particular sectors or sector changes that we want to look at. The other thing around reframing this is some people will say, I feel like I'm out of touch with some skills. Well, then use it an opportunity as well to expand networks and to learn something new. So to kind of upskill can be useful as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Suzanne. Um, I'm going to come on to how leaders maybe communicate during redundancy. I'm talking about kind of the employer maybe making the redundancies and the leaders that maybe Claire and Jez you've engaged with probably fairly recently. So Jez, in your experience, how can leaders communicate redundancy decisions with honesty and empathy and clarity? It's a bit difficult because sometimes they can't say everything, or they feel maybe awkward, or maybe they're just a bit challenged as leaders. So what's your tip to leaders in organizations who are maybe putting people at risk and going through a redundancy process?
Yeah. So hopefully you can hear me okay. My internet just went down. So
No, we can hear you. That's great.
Okay. Okay, good. So communicate. I think communicate with the appropriate people that should know that you're being made redundant. The managerial chain. Be absolutely clear. I think not everybody knows or understands the technical legal jargon. And so I think just be completely clear and transparent. Um, and be clear on what the company is offering as well, not just the financial package, but all the additional support. We've talked about engaging with outplacement. Is that being offered? If so, make sure it's known straight away when it will kick in. Anything else that's a part of it. And I think how can I say this?
I think we're losing your
Losing you.
internet again. We're losing your internet again, Jez. Sorry about that. You might want to come back on.
Have a responsibility for the individual as well as the company.
No.
Okay, I don't know whether anyone caught that, Jez, because I think your
Ah,
internet's been.
I'll
Suzanne, do
rejoin.
you?
For me to just step in
Yeah,
for a
do that.
sec.
Do you
Yeah.
just step in on that one?
So this is for leaders communicating it. It's really clear to explain the business rationale, the why it's happening. Be really clear and consistent with your messaging for that. We know with redundancy processes, sometimes information isn't able to be communicated at different stages. So communicate what you can, but the business rationale has to be really clear. To also make it really clear that it will be a fair and a fair process, fair and consistent. I think people can understand much more when they know it's going to be a fair process. And yeah, I think that's really key. Understand the why, that it will be fair, that it will follow the correct procedures. Don't, if there's got to follow correct procedures. I've been on the other side where half of my office got, or a third of my office, sorry, got immediately made redundant with no consultation periods or anything. That was awful. And it didn't do the organisation very good at all. Yeah. Sorry, does
Yeah.
that
So
help?
yeah,
Jumping
it
in
does.
on
It's
the
their
stuff.
they've got to realize this is kind of PR that will live in people's memory for a very long time. So how you say goodbye to people is really important.
They've also
And
got to realize, sorry, that the emotions, people will take this on
yes,
board in different ways. And
absolutely.
that's from a leadership through to managers, through to all employees. We all
Yeah.
are impacted by change differently. So anything like training and support for leaders, managers, and those navigating change can be so, so great. Yeah.
Yes, agree. Claire, if I could come back to you, just something, because you talked about going through that kind of curve, and how you dealt with it emotionally and how
Mm.
you kind of focused yourself. But how did you maintain motivation and structure personally during that kind of job search once you,
Yeah.
I suppose, got over that initial embarrassment?
Yeah, so Suzanne will laugh about this because when I met Suzanne a bit later on, she asked me what I was doing, and I was like, right, I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning
Okay.
and I'm starting my job search. And then I'm doing this, this, and this. And I'm absolutely exhausted. And I remember Suzanne going, why are you getting up at 5:30? And the reason for me at the time was, well, if I don't get up at early doors, I'm not going to get the job that I want. And I need some sort of routine because I don't want to sit waiting for jobs to come to me. But the realization is that getting up at 5:30 and exhausting myself mentally is not going to help. So I feel very strongly about exercise. I think getting out, getting some fresh air. I've got a dog, so I have to walk him. And that really helped with my mental health as well. So I think definitely, I know we've all mentioned having a routine. And I think part of that routine needs to be really looking after your mental health as well, because it helps with clarity and forward thinking and making sure you're making those right decisions as well.
Yeah. And motivation and to
Absolutely.
stay positive, clearly.
Yeah.
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 It
And that
sounds
little
obvious.
Sorry, that
Sorry.
little change for mental health can also be an environment change. It could be saying, do you know what, midweek on a Wednesday, I'm
Yeah.
going to go and get a coffee in a local hotel or, in a cafe, and I'm going to do my search for a few hours there, and then I'm going to have my exercise time, etc. So change your routine. Don't, especially if you're at home so much, get out and
Yeah.
about as well. Get dressed up and go somewhere. It can bring a different energy to this too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Suzanne, we've touched a little bit on how employers, we've talked about doing this well and the kind of practical steps they can take to support employees' well-being. So, there may be HR or managers or indeed leaders on this call who are aware that they're recognizing signs of maybe distress and stress in their staff that are going through or are at risk at the moment. So how can they respond to that and kind of keep an eye out for it?
So we often see it in different ways. We might see it with increased absenteeism. We might see it with people being late. We might see people being withdrawn. We might see mood swings. We can see it in very different ways. So if it's individuals that you're noticing that with, check in with them, regularly check in with them, feel that you can, ask them how they are, signpost to support if it's needed, employee assistance programs. If there's if it's more volume, then again, signpost people, think about staff forums for support, because one of the greatest things we can do with a challenging time is speak to other people in the same boat. So some organizations will have like open staff forums. Um, Consider things like training managers. We've said already about spotting the signs. It shouldn't just land, it shouldn't just land with HR. So train the managers on things like that. Something
Yeah.
I've been doing with an organization, we've been doing leading change and uncertainty and resilience webinars. Giving the managers resilience tools to support their people can be really useful. But some of the little practical things like adjusting people's workloads if they're really feeling this stress and pressure. If clarity is fading for somebody, help them reprioritize so that productivity doesn't dip so much. So help
Yeah.
reprioritize, help workloads, and also just bring in that culture of celebrating successes and wins, just to help that momentum as well, can be useful.
Right. I'm just aware we've got a lot of questions, so I'm going to try and answer some of those and then, we'll see where we go. So this is a really interesting one, actually. Obvious when you think about it, but interesting. So it's someone saying, enjoying the chat. Thank you so much for the insight. How can you best reframe redundancy when speaking about it in interviews or networking conversations? So I'm thinking probably interviews, how did you maybe present it initially, and how then did you find the best way to reframe it, I suppose, positively and present it maybe towards the end? Jez, do you want to pick that up? Is that okay? And then I can ask
Yeah,
Claire for her thoughts.
yeah, it's an interesting one because you don't want to, again, it's the embarrassment of saying, oh, I was made redundant. And I actually had 6 months out in the end, but I knew that I was going into a role 3 months of that. So there was 3 months that I was kind of looking for roles and having interviews, and I kind of pitched it more that I saw it as an opportunity to further what I wanted to do. Yes, I had been let go and it was all part of the company restructure. So I kind of made a point of that and as your point earlier, it was the position that was made redundant, not me. And then kind of turning it quite quickly. So yes, you have to kind of say you've been through it, but then turning it positively of what you've done in the aftermath, if you like, to work on what you've been doing to try and get a new role. So mentioning volunteering, mentioning
Mm.
going out with contacts, mentioning the holidays you've had if you've been lucky enough to have holidays, mentioning the dog walks, mentioning the structure that you've put into your days to make sure
Yeah.
that you're still achieving things on a daily basis. One thing that I was going to mention um, was journaling. And I didn't really get into it, but I made a point of every Friday after a while making notes of what I'd achieved in that week so that I could, because I was forgetting my little wins. Uh,
Mm.
and I was only looking at for those big wins, and those big wins were getting an interview and succeeding in an interview. And but by journaling and recognizing your little wins through each week on a Friday. For me, it worked on a Friday afternoon because you go more positively into the weekend and you're not putting that sadness on everybody else. But it also helped in the interviews and discussions that I was having that I could comment on the achievements that I've made since I've been made redundant.
Great. Thank you, Jez. Claire, anything from your side in terms of how you reframe that at an interview or how you dealt with it?
Yeah, I mean, as I explained, I went through several stages of emotions and how I went through redundancy. But by the time I'd had lots of advice and lots of support, I was feeling really confident. So I would go into the interview and say, yes, I've been made redundant. However, I'm going to talk to you what I've been doing in that space and talked about my volunteering and talked about what I've learned. And I really wanted to show them that where I've come from and how much I've developed in that shorter time and that I'm worth employing. Another thing I just want to pick up from Jez, that definitely journaling. I've never done it before. Um, it took me a while to pick up the book and start writing down. But like Jez was saying, I recently, I mean, I've got it here. Look, this is still my journal. Just understanding the little wins, I think, is brilliant. And looking back at it now and looking how strong I was, I think it
Yeah.
just really helps. Yeah.
The other thing I'd add as well, which you just reminded me of, Claire, is that I did do some online training courses on LinkedIn, training, etc. And so where it was appropriate, I did mention those
Yeah.
in interviews as well.
Yeah. Just shows you know the motivation and the
Yeah.
focus even when you're not working. I'm just going to pick this up. It's been asked a few times in different ways, and it's just one question, but it's similar to a number of others. I'm in the at-risk stage, have reached out to a selection of my agency contacts, not hearing back from any. Is this more indicative of market conditions than my candidacy? So I'll talk to that first, given that I work in recruitment every day. I would say yes, there's definitely we are seeing an increase in candidates applying for vacancies. And unemployment is ticking upwards. Now that's we still have pretty high employment rates in the UK, thankfully, but it is ticking upwards. And what I'm seeing is, and I'm seeing applications to jobs every day, and I can tell you, we at Morgan Hunt, we will deal with someone's application as a person will be dealing with it. It's not a piece of AI, it's not a piece of technology, although we do use tech to do some of the heavy lifting. But an individual will look at every application. I'm seeing a lot of people kind of praying and spraying their CV around and clearly doing volume applications. And it's pretty evident when you open the CV, they didn't really look at the key criteria in the role. And I get that because that's probably coming from a place of I just need to apply. And we've talked about that to lots of jobs. Um, my advice would be, Suzanne mentioned it, network, start engaging with other individuals, ask them, have they, if they've got a similar background to you, if they've got a particular contact at an agency that has worked well. Recruiters will always be working on a specific role. So, whilst they'll keep your CV on file on a database, they will always work role to role, but maybe network and engage with recruiters that you see advertising more of the types of roles that you're looking for. Suzanne, is there anything else you wanted to mention to that? Because you're talking to people every day who are experiencing that maybe?
Yeah. Okay. So, really quick one on here. Last week at a conference, HR conference, people were saying the same thing from a HR recruitment point of view. We're getting much more applications with AI because of the spray and pray, because of the easy apply, etc. So that's out of our control. What is in our control in this ever automated recruitment process? Bring back the human process. So Janice, who's just landed her role and started this week, she sent her CV via the big portal, but she also reached out directly to the could-be hiring manager on LinkedIn. On the day that all the doom and gloom of Amazon redundancies came, she started her new job in the retail sector. So limit kind of that social media and the doom and gloom on the news.
Yes.
Bring the personal touch back. The recruiters, if you've reached out to them already and you haven't heard back, two things I would say: follow it up. Follow it up because they're busy. They've got lots of people they see. So follow it up and also make their jobs easier. Really think about what's your pitch, kind of put it on an email or have it really clear. Just what are you looking for? Types of organizations you're looking for, size of organizations you're looking for. Help them match you. Or go directly to organizations as well. But yeah, help them match you because their job is a specialist recruiter. They'll have the contacts, they'll know what's going on in the market, but they see lots of CVs. So help them to understand what you're looking for as much as you can.
Yeah, I think that's really great. I'm just quickly looking down through our questions just to say, um, yeah, so there's somebody asking about AI being used to filter CVs, and responses seems to be getting, just because you may get an automated response, and again, I'll talk to that, it doesn't mean that AI has filtered you out. It just means that the recruiter has probably looked at your CV and clicked a button. Now, I can't talk for every organization, but I agree with you, Suzanne. Bring back the human touch, start engaging, and make it very clear why you feel you're right for that role. And that goes back to probably less is more, being more tailored in your applications. Why am I right for this role? Because when we send CVs over to a client, that's what we highlight. We don't just send the CV and let the client do the hard work. We say, I'm sending Suzanne Penny and I'm sending her because of X, Y, and Z. And that relates back to what our client has briefed us about. So that's a tip in terms of if you're looking yourself, being focused in terms of what you're looking for. And as Suzanne says, helping the recruiter highlight why you feel you're right for the role. And it probably also means that you're going to apply for less roles, but you're going to put in better quality applications. So I think that's really important. There's somebody talking about shaping their CV. They've been out of work for 5 years plus for numerous reasons, including health scares, etc., numerous losses. How do they shape that? So I know that's quite specific. I mean, Suzanne, I know you offer a lot of tools, and we do as well as a lot of CV writing tools on our website, but I don't know whether you want to talk to that, Suzanne.
I think the key is first and foremost, focus on what you've done, focus on what you've got rather than what you haven't. Appreciate that there will be more gaps on a CV. And I think it's really thinking then maybe it's more of a functional format of CV if there's been more time off to be able to have page one highlighting your key skills, your key achievements, and your transferable skills headings where you summarize your expertise under transferable skills headings. Then you could have a heading saying career history included, and you can put some of the roles that you want to highlight that way, year to year format, rather than worrying about any months on there. That could be a good way of doing it. But when I've seen people certainly want to change sector, go back and do something that you've done 5, 6 years ago, or that's got lots of gaps due to certain reasons, then functional CVs can be good. If, however, you're looking for exactly the similar type of role, and there's just gaps because of family reasons, I would also be honest to say career break.
Yeah.
Career break, caring for family members or something like that.
Yeah.
Make clear in your email or letter that you're now fully open to your new
Yes.
opportunity and excited to get back in the workplace. If you've been doing upskilling and learning, put that in your CV too.
Yeah, completely agree. Gaps just make people confused, and you'll probably be more likely rejected if there's an unexplained gap than an explained gap. So as you say, Suzanne, put the detail in. I've got a question.
Most people
Sorry.
have gaps since the pandemic. Most people have had multiple
Yes,
redundancies or some redundancies.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, One question here, how do you handle or would you handle a situation where you're being laid off, but you have to train the person who will replace you? Do whether anyone's had experience of that or who would like to lead on that one? I can give an opinion.
Yeah, go
You
for it,
probably
Claire. And
can
then
as well,
I've just
Suzanne.
had somebody go through this. So yeah,
Yeah.
feel free to.
I mean, it's really, that's really emotional, but I think it's again, trying to put your best foot forward in terms from a professional perspective, and actually you can about that in an interview with another organization that shows a high level of professionalism, maturity, and a real kind of sense of you are clearly wanting to leave on the best possible note. I know it's very difficult to take that emotion out of your being made redundant, but like I say, if you can approach that in a really professional, structured manner, then that is something. It's an achievement before you leave your role that will get you a lot of kudos, and I think it will stand out in an interview. Suzanne?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you've just said. It's a case of focusing on what you can control as well, because so many of us spend so much of our precious energy on things outside of our control when we could be plowing that energy into other things, looking for that next new chapter. I always kind of trust that where I'm meant to be in my life and in my career. And I trust right now that this person would be coming in and it's my time to go on to something better.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I see it. But as you've said, it shows some brilliant transferable skills there and professionalism.
Yeah. I'm just aware, sorry, we're not going to necessarily going to get to answer everything, but I will signpost people to some resources when we send out the follow-up. I did want to come back to both Claire and Jez and ask you individually before we finish up. Claire, if I can come to you, what would be that one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's just found out they're being made redundant?
Um, I think take some time out, digest everything, and reach out to as many people and talk to as many people as you can. And then make a plan of where you want to be in your next role.
Great. Thank you, Claire. And Jez, what's your thoughts on that one?
Well, and I hope my internet doesn't go down again. Don't be on your own. I know it's hard kind of repeating what Claire said, but really do reach out to contacts who that have faced redundancy, speak to other people. You'll be surprised how many people will give over their time, as I said earlier. So yeah, don't hold it all inside.
And don't try and be that brave person. And if you don't ask, you don't get. And as you say, most people are much more supportive and helpful than you'd ever believe, but you've got to ask. Suzanne,
Yeah.
were you going to say something there?
I just want to mention, Jez, you just said it, don't be on your own. It's so important in challenging times, in uncertain times. The worst thing we can do is struggle on our own.
Mhm.
So reach out to your support networks. Consider, whether you want to get professional support is up to you, but think about communities. What I will say is if there is enough demand on here, and if you do want to join a free LinkedIn group, you can. I lead a small fee recruit community that's got 20 years of my expertise in digital courses. And we're live every couple of weeks for masterclasses and support. And like I said, we started with 5 people, we've got to 10. We've had 3 people start a new job this week. On the week that we had all these redundancies in the news, 3 people have started new jobs. It's a joy to see. So I think reach out whether to Morgan Hunt on the follow-up or on LinkedIn. And
Yeah.
if there is that desire, then we can look at something. Yeah.
I think you touched, I know it's been said before, I think you don't obsess on the news either, and don't
No.
obsess about hearing. And there's a lot of stuff, say, going on in the States. It's different, and you're an individual, so focus on what you can control. You can't control any of that. So it's best to just ignore block it out. Don't look at it. If it's not helping your mental health, don't go there.
And you're
There
still
is
that
one,
professional. Sorry, you're still that professional. The lady that I think it was a lady that said about with interviews and going to interviews, you're still that professional person. Redundancy shouldn't have to be an embarrassing thing. You still are you're just in career transition, looking for that next opportunity. So remember that you are still that person. Yeah.
yeah. And there's an individual saying they've loved working in the renewable sectors, but there's fewer opportunities there and struggling for enthusiasm to apply for roles in other sectors. I would signpost them to your free community, Suzanne, and indeed consider a career coach to do that kind of reframing and that advice, like Jez mentioned and Claire, that really helped them focus on there are other sectors you can pivot, but you probably need some external help and advice to do that,
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
what I would suggest.
Claire, I'd just like to say that I was in telecoms. I'm now in the
Yeah.
energy infrastructure sector. So I've completely changed. And before that, I was in the food industry for 25, 26 years. So I've changed and gained a huge amount of experience from being in different sectors.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So can definitely be done. And yes, you can, there's transferable skills.
Yes.
I'm afraid it's 11 o'clock and I haven't asked a lot of my questions. I've tried to cover as many of our questions, but it's great to get that engagement. I'm afraid that's all we have time for this morning, but we may well revisit this topic in the new year. And but I'd just like to thank everyone who's joined us on YouTube this morning and took time out of their day to join us. I do hope that you found the session as insightful and helpful as I did, but a very big thank you to my three wonderful guests this morning. Thank you to Clare Wiggins,
Thank
to
you.
Jez Fraser-Hook, and to Suzanne Penny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing your time and your experiences with us and being so honest. Just a reminder for everybody who's joined, we will share a recording of this session within the next 24 hours. And there will be information in terms of how you can contact all of us on there. And we also try and add in any resources. So no doubt Suzanne will have some links and resources that she'll share with us, and we will pass those to everyone who's signed up. So thank you everyone for joining this morning, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.